This is Ontario, Canada. It's only 5 hours from my house in the States and offers unmatched scenery and miles of trail systems through a vast and expansive area of public use Crown land. In fact, just shy of 90% of all of Ontario is Crown land, making it an outdoor playground for outdoor and off-road enthusiasts like me and like my two friends who joined me on this trip. Kirk in his newly built 4-door Bronco, and Jerry in his custom turbocharged imported Australian Land Cruiser. Kirk had just finished up the install of his new suspension earlier that week, and although I too had just installed a bunch of goodies including a 3-inch lift, new Vossen wheels, and general tires, I wasn't quite ready to hit the trails yet. I snagged Kirk and we headed to Jerry's, where that morning we would complete the installation of my beefy tie rod sleeves and upgraded bushings for the inside of my steering rack. By 9 a.m. we were on the road and heading north to cross the border. Getting to Canada was uneventful and the crossing went smoothly. After topping off our tanks, we set out on a trail that I had previously mapped out and hoped to set up camp along the bank of the Batchewana River.
Not a bad spot, eh? That's when I scoped this out with Brady in the winter, I was like, coming back here, for sure.
Friday morning, I woke up before the other guys. Not necessarily by plan, but that's just how my body works, I guess. There was a thick fog holding over the river. The air was cool and calm, and there was a light layer of dew on everything. We packed up our beds and cleaned up camp, and had decided the night prior that we would attempt a trail that was previously impassable due to a washout. Now, Jerry seemed confident that we could cross, although he had never actually seen the damage before.
Carving away.
A little bit, yeah, right there. Keep going. Keep going. You're on the stump. You're on top. You're over.
This stuff never looks bad on camera, but like this track that I was initially trying to go up there, I mean the whole Bronco like fits in that hole. That's how deep that is. And this section is quite steep also. Driver. Go, 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 go.
Jerry, you can come up here and walk and figure out a way across this.
I think it's skinny, but doable. It's definitely changed. Well, it's gonna get tippy, and it's all sand, but it'll be okay.
Yeah, I think we're about to half kick it out over there.
Yeah.
There's one coming off.
And while it's most definitely possible to go across here, when we get about 100 feet that way, the trail is so narrow that only an ATV can get across it. So we're gonna have to just find an alternate route to going down the trail, I guess.
So we do have an alternate route here, which this goes down along the river. And then I think we can drive kind of along the shore to get back up to where we were. And hopefully continue back down that trail.
How's it going up there, bud?
I am in reverse.
Not in good reverse, like you're coming all the way back?
Plan was no good. Water's too deep. So now our backup to the backup is just to do the trail we were going to do in the first place.
Stop.
Stop. Okay, straighten her out. Good. Straight forward.
This section really shows how sometimes the smaller and straight axle Land Cruiser can get through things better than our Broncos can. Now, on camera it might not look like much, but you can see how the Broncos lean heavily to the driver's side and how they just barely fit on this narrow shelf of sand with swamp on one side and the river on the other. One small error here could mean a full day of recovery efforts. Now, I'm curious how this section will fare throughout the seasons. I mean, you can already see how the sand is eroding away, and I can't imagine it'll get any better, but sometimes Mother Nature surprises us.
Keep coming, keep coming, keep coming. All right, you're out of it. Go ahead. Go straight.
Just past the sand shelf, we encountered another narrow section with a sharp drop-off. I actually got out and measured here to see if I could even fit, and with some tire hanging off the edge, I was able to give myself about a ½ inch of clearance on the driver's side.
Don't go any further, passenger. Don't turn this way.
With that behind us, we continued on and mapped out some trails that will hopefully be available on Onyx soon, since they now have expanded into Canada. Midday, we did some exploring on foot, which gave us a nice break from sitting all day, and though some of the exploration was strenuous. We also took this opportunity to fry up some hamburgers for lunch, only to realize that Jerry had the buns, but no hamburgers.
Jerry, do we need to go this direction?
No.
But are we going to go that direction?
Well, yeah. I got my Indiana Jones hat on.
Yeah, you're good there.
Right. A little bit that way.
We continued on down the trail and had a few small creek crossings and some other obstacles, but nothing too crazy. When we turned off the main trail, we encountered some thick and overgrown trails that required some maintenance, so we busted out the chainsaws to clear those up for future use. And just before emerging onto the rocky bank of the river, you'd think there actually wasn't a trail at all. Later that night, the three of us would argue the differences of overlanding, off-roading, wheeling, and camping. Now, I'd call what we're doing here overlanding, now that that's the popular word, but I don't really care what you call it. Jerry really enjoys the challenges that we encounter on the trail, and 9 out of 10 times he would actually prefer a little more difficulty, or he will intentionally choose to take a harder line. I, on the other hand, have no problem driving on basically a gravel road for a long while, because for me, the excitement is found in just how remote you can get and how scenic of a camp spot you can find. Settling in on the banks of the river, I realized I may have exercised some poor judgment earlier in the day that could prove to be detrimental to tomorrow's adventuring. My outburst of high-speed, full-throttle spirited driving had burned through much more gas than anticipated, and I already have the smallest tank here. We set up camp, built a fire, and devoured some of the best street tacos I've ever cooked. Tomorrow's plan? Don't run out of fuel. The morning of day 3 here. Slept excellent last night. Really, for today, all we need to do is definitely make sure that we get back to some sort of civilization that has fuel, because I am below a half tank, and we are pretty deep in here. So I have the smallest fuel tank here, the smallest range. I have an extra 2.5 gallons on the back that I can use if we need it, but I'd hope to not need that. So we'll see how far we can make it today, and hopefully get some fuel back on the highway. I filmed a lot less on day 3 as the routes we were taking kind of opened up a bit, and since they were easier to get to, we also saw our first other humans since we had gotten on the trail. We ultimately decided not to get fuel, but rather just work our way back in the direction of the highway and try to find a spot to camp. So with about 60 miles to empty, I've dumped in my spare fuel and hoped for the best. So we took it a little slower, not only because of the fuel issue, but because we were constantly scanning for a spot where we could camp. What we settled on was a little peninsula into a lake that fit 2 of us, and the third stayed tucked up into the trees near where we built a fire ring. We saw some activity in the water, and someone had left a boat here, which, if you've ever done this type of travel before, it's not actually all that uncommon. There were no oars, but we found some wood that worked well enough.
Look at this. Look, it stopped. But no, look at this.
Plug the hole, Kirk. It's fine.
Put your foot over it, idiot. If we really got fancy, we could have put them in here.
So with a big toe plugging the main hole and some homemade hooks and deconstructed paracord, we gave fishing a try. Now, after about 3 minutes, Jerry lost his patience and the boat was sinking anyway, so we went back in empty-handed and made dinner with what we had packed. After some epic drone shots on the morning of day 4, I packed up all the camera gear and we made a beeline for home so we could start planning our next adventure.